Meena walked through the narrow lane that led to the small public school where she worked. Her sandals were worn out, and the strap often slipped from her foot, but she walked quickly, holding her old handbag close. The sun was already warm, and the smell of dust filled the air. Inside her bag were a few notebooks, chalk pieces, and some papers she had checked late at night. Her salary was small, and her home was simple, but she carried herself with quiet dignity. Meena was not only a teacher by profession, but also by heart. Teaching was never easy for her. The classrooms were crowded, and the school building was old. The windows had no glass, only broken wooden frames. Sometimes, when it rained, water leaked from the ceiling, but still, the children came and sat on the cracked benches. Meena believed education could change their future, so she never lost hope. Every morning, she greeted her students with a warm smile, even if her own stomach was empty. She lived alone in a small rented room, and many nights she skipped her dinner to save money for the next day. But when she entered her class, none of her struggles showed on her face. For her students, she was only their teacher, gentle, patient, and always ready to help. Among the children in her class was a boy named Ravi. He was quiet, small for his age, and his clothes were always faded. His shirt had patches, and his shoes were almost torn. Sometimes he carried no lunch, and when the other children opened their tiffin boxes, Ravi would look down at his desk, pretending to be busy. Meena noticed it, but she never made him feel ashamed. One day, during the lunch break, Meena saw Ravi sitting alone under a tree. He had no food, and his eyes looked tired. She sat beside him and asked gently, "Ravi, why are you not eating?" Ravi tried to smile and replied, "I am not hungry, teacher." But his weak voice told the truth. Without saying more, Meena opened her own small lunch box. Inside were just a few chapatis and some vegetables. She pushed it toward him and said, "I brought extra today. Will you share with me?" Ravi hesitated, but when she insisted, he took a small piece. His eyes shone with gratitude, though he did not say much. From that day onward, Meena began carrying an extra chapati in her lunchbox. Sometimes she also slipped a fruit into his bag when no one was watching. She knew he came from a very poor family, and his parents could hardly afford his studies. Slowly, Ravi began to trust her. He started asking small questions in class, raising his hand with shy courage. When he got the answers right, Meena praised him with a smile, and his face lit up. It was as if her words gave him strength that no one else offered. But not everyone in the class understood. Some children whispered and teased him for wearing old clothes. Once, when his pencil broke, another boy laughed and said, "Can't you even buy a pencil?" Ravi's face turned red, and he lowered his head. Before he could reply, Meena stepped in. "Every child here is equal," she said firmly. "Pencils and books do not make you better than others. What makes you better is kindness and respect." The class fell silent, and Ravi looked at her with wide eyes, as if her words had wrapped him in safety. At home, Meena thought often about him. She had little money, but whenever she could, she bought him a notebook or a set of pencils from the market. She never gave it in front of others, instead, she quietly placed it on his desk before class began. Ravi always understood who had given it, and he would bow his head with silent thanks. Her care for him grew deeper each day. She saw not just a poor child, but a bright spark waiting for a chance. He was quick with numbers, and though his handwriting was uneven, his answers were sharp. Meena believed that with the right guidance, Ravi could rise higher than anyone expected. Still, a shadow lingered in her mind. She knew that not everyone in the school shared her way of thinking. Some teachers were strict and believed in rules more than compassion. The headmaster, in particular, valued discipline and order above all else. He often told teachers not to spoil children with too much kindness. But Meena's heart was different. For her, teaching was not just about books and exams. It was about giving children the courage to believe in themselves. And for Ravi, who carried both poverty and loneliness on his small shoulders, she felt a special responsibility. As the school bell rang that afternoon, Meena watched her students leave one by one. Ravi lingered behind, carefully folding his torn books. She walked up to him and said softly, "Ravi, you must always remember, no matter how hard life feels, education will give you strength. Do not stop learning." Ravi looked at her with eyes that were both tired and hopeful. "I will try, teacher," he said. When Meena walked home that evening, she carried no food in her bag, but her heart was full. She did not know what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing for sure: she would always stand beside children like Ravi, even if the world stood against her. The next morning, Meena entered her classroom with her usual smile. She greeted her students, and they stood up together to say, "Good morning, teacher." She nodded gently and began the lesson. But as she spoke, her eyes often moved toward Ravi, who sat in the corner, trying to stay unnoticed. His books were the same worn-out ones, their pages almost falling apart. His small hands worked hard to keep up with the writing, though his pencil was almost half its size. Meena felt both pain and pride when she saw his effort. She had been watching him grow more confident. Just a few weeks ago, Ravi hardly spoke in class, but now he tried to answer whenever she asked a question. His voice was soft, but the spark in his eyes showed that he was learning, step by step. But not every child in the class looked at him with kindness. Some of the other boys, especially those from wealthier families, often teased him for his clothes and quiet nature. Meena tried to correct them every time, but children did not always understand the weight of their words. One afternoon, during the break, Meena went outside to check on the class. She stopped when she heard laughter. Near the playground, Ravi stood with his head down while two older boys mocked him. "Look at his shoes," one of them said loudly. "They have more holes than leather." The other added, "Maybe he should come to school barefoot. That will make him faster." The children around them laughed. Ravi's face turned red, and his eyes filled with tears. He held his books tightly against his chest, as if trying to protect himself. Before the laughter grew louder, Meena stepped forward. "Enough," her voice cut through the noise. The children froze. "Is this what I teach you? To laugh at someone who is already struggling?" The boys looked down, ashamed. Meena placed a gentle hand on Ravi's shoulder and said, "True strength is not in money or clothes. It is in kindness and learning. Remember that." Ravi looked up at her, and though he did not speak, his eyes said everything. At that moment, he felt that at least one person in the world was standing beside him. But this act of protection did not remain hidden for long. Later that day, one of the wealthy parents who had come to pick up their child noticed Meena giving extra attention to Ravi. The parent frowned and whispered to another, "This teacher spends too much time on that boy. Our children also need attention." By the evening, the whispers reached the headmaster. The next morning, Meena was called into his office. The headmaster, a tall man with sharp eyes, sat behind a wooden desk filled with files. He spoke in a serious tone. "Meena, I have been hearing things," he said slowly. "Parents are complaining. They say you are giving special attention to one poor boy and ignoring the rest of the class." Meena was shocked. "Sir," she replied softly, "I treat all my students with care. But this boy, Ravi, needs more help than others. He has no support at home. If we do not guide him, he will be left behind." The headmaster shook his head. "Our duty is to teach, not to solve personal problems. If every teacher starts bringing their emotions into the class, there will be no discipline. You must focus on the whole class equally." Meena folded her hands nervously. "But sir, isn't it also our duty to protect the weaker ones? If a child is bullied, how can I stand silent? If a child has no books, how can I ignore it?" The headmaster's eyes hardened. This is not about emotions, Meena. Some parents are very influential. They do not like to see their children treated the same as poor ones. You must be careful. I am warning you, do not cross the line again. Meena walked out of the office with a heavy heart. She had not expected such a cold response. Her mind was filled with questions. Was she wrong to stand up for Ravi? Was caring for one child truly a mistake? That afternoon, as if fate wanted to test her, another incident occurred. During the last period, Ravi was pushed by one of the older boys in the corridor. His books fell, and the older boy laughed loudly. Ravi bent down quickly, trying to pick up his pages before anyone else noticed. But Meena saw it. She rushed forward, her face firm. Why did you push him? She asked the older boy. The boy shrugged. It was just fun, teacher. Fun? Meena's voice grew sharper. Is hurting someone fun? Do you think courage means bullying someone weaker than you? The corridor grew silent. The other students looked on, surprised to see their gentle teacher speaking with such force. Ravi stood frozen, his small hands trembling as he gathered his papers. Meena knelt beside him, helping him pick up the scattered sheets. Then she stood tall and looked around at the children. Respect is not shown in words. Respect is shown in how you treat those who have less than you. If you cannot be kind, then all your learning is meaningless. Ravi clutched his books to his chest and whispered, "Thank you, teacher." Her heart ached as she smiled at him. She knew very well that her words and actions might cause more trouble with the headmaster. But she also knew she could never stand by and watch a child be humiliated. As she walked back to her class, Meena felt the weight of the warning given by the headmaster. She wondered how long she could protect Ravi before the school turned against her. Yet deep inside, she also felt a quiet strength. She had chosen the path of compassion, and no fear could take that away from her. The next morning, the air in the school felt strangely heavy for Meena. As she walked through the corridor carrying her bag, she noticed the headmaster standing near the office door. His eyes followed her as she passed, and she sensed that something unpleasant was about to happen. She tried to push the thought aside and entered her classroom. The children greeted her cheerfully, and for a while, their innocent voices made her forget her worries. She began her lesson with energy, drawing numbers on the blackboard and asking the children to solve them. Ravi sat at the back, writing carefully with his tiny pencil stub. His eyes shone when she praised him for answering correctly. But before the class could finish, a peon entered and said politely, "Teacher, the headmaster is calling you." Meena felt a chill in her chest. She told the students to stay quiet and left the room. Her steps were slow, and her heart beat faster as she reached the headmaster's office. Inside, the headmaster sat with a stern face. On the desk were a few files, but it was clear he was waiting only for her. He gestured toward the chair. "Sit down, Meena." She sat, folding her hands in her lap. The headmaster's voice was calm but sharp. "I gave you a clear warning yesterday, did I not? I told you not to involve yourself too much with that boy, Ravi. But what happened in the corridor yesterday? You shouted at a student and created a scene in front of everyone." Meena's throat tightened, but she answered with respect. "Sir, I did not mean to create a scene. The boy was bullying Ravi. I only wanted to stop it. If I had stayed silent, Ravi would have felt helpless." The headmaster tapped the table with his pen. "Discipline should be handled differently. You made the older boy look small in front of everyone. His father is one of the biggest donors of this school. Do you understand what trouble this can bring?" Meena looked at him with pleading eyes. "Sir, but is it wrong to protect a child who is weaker? Our duty is not only to teach lessons from books, but also lessons of kindness. If we ignore such behavior, what kind of adults will these children become?" Her words hung in the air, but the headmaster's expression remained unmoved. He leaned back in his chair and said firmly, "Enough, Meena. You are too emotional. This is not how a teacher should behave. The school cannot afford such drama." A silence filled the room. Meena's heart sank as she realized what was coming. The headmaster continued, "I am sorry, but you are no longer needed in this school. You are dismissed from your post with immediate effect." The words struck her like cold wind. For a moment, she sat frozen, unable to believe what she had heard. "Sir, you mean? I am fired," she whispered. The headmaster avoided her eyes. "You may collect your final salary from the office. Please hand over your classroom keys by today." Her hands trembled. She wanted to argue, to defend herself, but the lump in her throat grew heavier. She realized no words would change his decision. With slow steps, she stood up. "I only tried to do what was right," she said softly, almost to herself. As she left the office, her eyes burned with unshed tears. The corridor seemed longer than ever. When she reached her classroom, she paused at the door. The children were still busy writing, their heads bent over their notebooks. A sudden wave of sadness washed over her. These children, her little world, would no longer be hers. She entered quietly and said, "Children, continue your work." She gathered her books and papers into her old handbag. The children looked up, confused. Ravi especially noticed the unusual silence in her face. "Teacher, are you going somewhere?" he asked in a soft voice. Meena forced a smile, though her lips quivered. "I will not be teaching here anymore, Ravi. But you must keep studying hard, do you understand?" The children gasped. Some whispered among themselves. Ravi's eyes widened, and he shook his head. "No, teacher, please don't go," he whispered. His small voice carried all the fear and sadness in his heart. Meena knelt beside him and touched his head gently. "Sometimes in life, things happen that we cannot control. But promise me, Ravi, you will not give up. You will keep learning, no matter what." Tears rolled down Ravi's cheeks, and Meena's own eyes filled. She quickly turned away before the children saw her break down completely. By the time the final bell rang, Meena had left the school building. Her footsteps on the dusty road felt heavier than ever before. She carried her bag, but her heart carried a weight no one could see. At home, she sat on her small bed, staring at the wall. Questions flooded her mind. Had she done wrong by protecting Ravi? Was her kindness truly a mistake? Why did the world punish those who stood for what was right? That night, she could not eat. She lay awake, listening to the sounds of the street outside. The laughter of children in nearby houses made her heart ache. She thought of Ravi, sitting in class tomorrow without her. Who would notice his empty lunchbox? Who would defend him when he was bullied? A tear slipped down her cheek. Losing her job was painful, but what hurt her most was the thought of leaving Ravi alone. For the first time in many years, Meena felt powerless. Yet, somewhere deep in her heart, she also knew that her fight for what was right was not truly over. The days after Meena lost her job felt heavier than she had ever imagined. Each morning, when the school bell rang in the distance, her heart tightened. For years, that sound meant the beginning of her purpose. Now, it only reminded her of what she had lost. Her small rented room grew quieter. The little desk where she once checked notebooks now lay empty. The chalk dust that often covered her fingers had disappeared. Teaching was not just her work, it was her life, her reason to wake up with hope. Without it, every day felt like a long shadow. She tried to find new jobs. She walked from one school to another, carrying her file of certificates and experience letters. At every office, the principals listened politely, but their answers were the same: "We have no vacancies right now." Some gave her a smile that carried no promise. Others did not even bother to look at her papers. Her savings were small. She began giving private tuition to children in her neighborhood. They came to her little room in the evenings, and she taught them with the same patience and care she gave to her school students. But the few coins she earned were hardly enough for rent and food. Many nights, she skipped her meal and told herself, "Tomorrow will be better." But what hurt her most was not hunger. It was the absence of Ravi. She wondered how he was managing without her. Did he still go to school? Was anyone helping him with his books? Did he eat lunch, or was he still sitting alone under the tree? One evening, as she returned from the market with just a small packet of rice, she saw a thin boy standing near the corner of the road. His little hands were holding a basket of flowers, and his face was pale with exhaustion. When she looked closer, her heart stopped. It was Ravi. "Ravi," she called out in shock. The boy looked up, his eyes widening with surprise. For a moment, his face brightened, but then it dimmed again, as if shame had pulled it down. He lowered his head and said softly, "Teacher." Meena rushed toward him. "Ravi, what are you doing here? Why are you selling flowers? Shouldn't you be in school?" Ravi hesitated, then whispered, "I stopped going, teacher. After you left, everything changed. I could not keep up. Some boys laughed at me again. My parents said we cannot waste time. They asked me to help earn something. So now, I sell flowers." Meena's throat tightened. She looked at the small basket, half filled with wilted flowers, and then at his tired face. He was just a child, but life had already placed heavy burdens on his shoulders. She bent down and held his hand. "Ravi, education is never a waste. You have so much talent, so much light inside you. Please don't let it go." Ravi's eyes glistened. "But without you, teacher, no one cares. No one believes in me." His words cut into her heart like a silent cry. She wanted to promise him that everything would be all right, but her own life was uncertain. She had no job, no money, and no power to bring him back to school. All she had was her faith. That night, Meena could not sleep. Ravi's small, tired face stayed in her mind. She remembered his shy smile when he solved a problem correctly, the way he looked at her when she praised him. He deserved a chance, but the world had shut its doors on him too quickly. The next few weeks dragged on. Meena continued her tuition classes, but her energy was low. Every time she passed the corner of the road, she hoped to see Ravi again. Sometimes she did, selling flowers in the same place. Each time, she spoke to him, encouraging him not to give up completely. But each time, she also walked away with tears in her eyes. Her heart battled with itself. One side told her she was powerless. The other side whispered that she must not stop believing. Perhaps life was testing her, showing her darkness so she could value light even more. One evening, as she sat by the window with a small lamp burning beside her, she whispered a prayer. "If there is a path for me, show it to me. If there is a way to bring Ravi back to school, guide me. I may not have much, but I still have my love for teaching." The night air was cool, carrying the distant sound of children's laughter. For the first time in weeks, Meena allowed herself a small smile. She realized that though her present was painful, her story was not over yet. Somewhere beyond the darkness, a new chapter was waiting. The weeks turned into months, and Meena's days passed quietly. She gave her small tuition classes in the evenings and managed to pay her rent with difficulty. Still, every night before sleeping, she thought of Ravi and whispered a prayer for him. Deep inside, she believed life would not always remain this dark. One morning, while she was sweeping the floor of her little room, the sound of the postman's cycle bell reached her ears. He stopped outside and called, "Letter for Meena, madam." Surprised, she opened the door and accepted the envelope. She rarely received letters. With careful hands, she opened it and began to read. It was from a well-known private school in the nearby town. The letter said, we have heard about your teaching from one of our staff members. We would like to invite you for an interview. Please come to our school tomorrow morning." Mina's eyes widened. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. After weeks of rejection, here was a school inviting her. She clutched the letter to her chest and whispered, "Thank you." The next morning, she wore her cleanest sari, though it was old and faded. She tied her hair neatly and carried her file of certificates. The journey to the school took nearly an hour by bus. As she stepped down, she looked at the large building in front of her. The walls were freshly painted, the classrooms had wide windows, and the playground stretched like a green field. It was nothing like the broken building where she had taught before. Her heart pounded as she walked through the gates. At the entrance, a kind-looking man greeted her. "You must be Mina," he said with a warm smile. "I am Arjun, the principal of this school. Please come inside." His gentle tone immediately made her feel at ease. She followed him to his office, where sunlight poured through the tall windows. They sat down, and he began, "I heard about you from a teacher who once worked in your old school. She told me how you always stood by your students, especially those in need. Is that true?" Mina's eyes lowered. "I only did what I felt was right, sir. Every child deserves kindness, no matter how poor or weak they are." Mr. Arjun nodded thoughtfully. "That is exactly what I believe too. A teacher's job is not only to teach lessons from books but also to shape hearts. And that is why I want teachers like you in my school." Her breath caught in her throat. "Are you offering me a job?" He smiled warmly. "Yes, Mina. If you are willing, you can start from next week. The children here need someone like you." Tears filled her eyes. For a moment, she could not speak. Then she whispered, "Thank you, sir. I will do my best." When she returned home that evening, her small room no longer felt so heavy. She cleaned it carefully, humming softly, something she had not done in weeks. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. The next week, her new journey began. On her first day, she entered her classroom nervously. The children looked at her with curious eyes. She greeted them with her gentle smile, and soon her calm voice filled the room as she introduced herself. Within minutes, she realized something important: the children were no different from the ones she had taught before. Some were bright, some were shy, some were restless, and some were slow. They all carried their own little worlds, and they all needed guidance. Her old pain slowly began to fade as she picked up the chalk and started writing on the board. During the lunch break, she sat at her desk, watching the children run and play outside. For the first time in months, she felt alive again. She was back where she belonged, in a classroom, surrounded by young hearts ready to learn. That evening, as she walked home after her first day, she noticed something in herself. Her steps were lighter, her shoulders straighter. The struggles she had faced were not wasted, they had brought her here. Yet, even as she smiled, Ravi's face returned to her mind. She wondered where he was and whether he still sold flowers at the street corner. The thought of him brought a soft ache in her heart. She whispered to herself, if only he could be here too. What Mina did not know was that life was quietly preparing a surprise for her. Mr. Arjun, the new principal, had already learned about Ravi from the same teacher who had recommended Mina. He admired how Mina had stood by that poor child, even at the cost of her own job. And deep in his heart, he had decided if Ravi could be found, he would be given a chance in this school too. For now, Mina only knew that her life had taken a turn. She had lost everything once, but she had gained a new beginning. And in this beginning, she promised herself one thing: she would continue to stand for children like Ravi, no matter what challenges came her way. Mina had settled into her new school slowly. Each day, she grew more comfortable with her students. Their bright faces, their laughter, and their curious questions filled her with fresh energy. Though she still carried the memory of her old school and Ravi, the new environment gave her strength to move forward. But deep in her heart, Ravi's absence always left an empty corner. She often wondered where he was, whether he still sold flowers, or whether he had completely left school. Sometimes, when she walked home after class, she looked at children in the streets, half hoping she might see him again. One bright morning, Mr. Arjun, the principal, walked into her classroom. The children stood up politely, and he waved with a smile. "Good morning, children. Today, I have a surprise," he said warmly. The students looked at each other with curiosity. Meena too wondered what the surprise could be. Then, at the door, she noticed a small figure standing shyly, holding a set of new books in his hands. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Ravi. For a moment, Meena could not breathe. Her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. The boy she thought she had lost forever was standing in front of her once again, this time in a neat uniform. His hair was combed, his face washed clean, and in his eyes was the same shy light she had always remembered. Mr. Arjun placed his hand gently on Ravi's shoulder. "Children, this is Ravi. He will be studying with you from today. He has received a scholarship from our school, so everything will be provided for him. I hope you will all welcome him kindly." The class clapped politely, but Meena hardly heard it. She could not stop looking at Ravi, who now walked slowly into the room and took a seat in the second row. His eyes met hers for a second, and in that look was 1,000 unspoken words: relief, gratitude, and love. After the principal left, Meena tried to continue her lesson, but her voice trembled with emotion. When the lunch break came, she quickly went to Ravi's desk. "Ravi," she whispered, her hands shaking, how are you here?" Ravi smiled shyly. "The principal sir came to our house. He told my parents that I could study here without paying anything. He gave me these books and this uniform. When I heard your name, teacher, I could not believe it. I thought I would never see you again." Meena's eyes filled once more, and she quickly blinked away the tears. "You are here now, Ravi. That is what matters. Promise me you will not leave your studies again." "I promise, teacher," he said firmly. From that day, Ravi became a part of her new class. Unlike before, he no longer sat in torn clothes or with broken pencils. He had proper books, and his lunchbox was filled with simple food, provided by the school program. The other children, guided by both Meena and Mr. Arjun, treated him kindly. Slowly, he began to open up. One afternoon, during a math lesson, Ravi raised his hand confidently. "Teacher, may I solve this problem on the board?" he asked. Meena's heart swelled with pride. "Of course, Ravi. Come forward." He walked up, chalk in hand, and carefully worked through the problem. His numbers were neat, his steps clear, and when he wrote the correct answer, the class clapped. Ravi turned toward them with a shy grin, and for the first time, he looked like he truly belonged. That evening, as Meena walked home, her heart felt lighter than ever before. The child she had once fed with her own lunch, the child she had defended even at the cost of her job, was now smiling again. And not only smiling, he was learning, dreaming, and standing tall. A few weeks later, the school held a small competition in writing and mathematics. To her joy, Ravi stood among the winners, holding his certificate with pride. When he came to show her, he said softly, "Teacher, this is because of you. You never gave up on me." Meena knelt beside him, holding his shoulders. "No, Ravi. This is because of your hard work. I only believed in you. You must always believe in yourself too." At the back of the hall, Mr. Arjun watched the scene quietly. His eyes were filled with respect for Meena. He had seen many teachers in his career, but rarely had he seen one who carried so much love and sacrifice in her heart. He thought to himself, this is the kind of teacher who changes lives. As days turned into weeks, Ravi's confidence grew. He no longer hid in the corner or stayed silent. He laughed with his classmates, asked questions boldly, and sometimes even helped others with their work. Meena often sat at her desk, watching him with quiet pride. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange, Ravi stayed back after class. He walked up to her desk and said, "Teacher, one day, I want to become like you. I want to help children who are poor, just like you helped me." Meena's eyes softened. She placed her hand on his head gently. "That will be the greatest gift you can give me, Ravi. To carry forward kindness." As he left the classroom that day, Meena sat alone for a moment, her heart full. Life had taken her through darkness, but it had also brought her here, to this light. The reunion she had never expected had given her back not only her student but also her purpose. Months passed, and the new school became like a second home for both Meena and Ravi. Every morning, the classroom filled with the cheerful voices of children, the scratching of pencils, and the laughter that echoed down the corridor. For Meena, each day felt like a blessing. She no longer carried the heavy pain of her past dismissal. Instead, she carried hope, a hope that her students, especially Ravi, would have brighter futures. Ravi had grown in confidence. Once shy and uncertain, he now raised his hand in almost every subject. His notebooks were neat, his answers thoughtful, and his curiosity endless. Many times, he stayed back after class to ask more questions, and Meena never grew tired of answering them. Mr. Arjun often visited their classroom. He watched quietly from the back, noting how Meena encouraged her students. She never scolded harshly, never made a child feel small. Instead, she guided with patience, her voice gentle yet firm. One day, after class, he said to her, "Meena, do you realize what you are doing here? You are not just teaching lessons, you are shaping lives." She lowered her eyes with humility. "I only do what I believe is right, sir." But Mr. Arjun smiled knowingly. He had seen many teachers, yet few carried such sincerity in their hearts. One afternoon, the school announced a grand event, a Future Dreams exhibition. Every student had to present something about their dream for the future. The children were excited, whispering to each other about their projects. Some wanted to be doctors, some engineers, some artists. Ravi, however, sat quietly at his desk, lost in thought. Meena noticed and walked over. "What will you prepare, Ravi?" she asked gently. He looked up at her with thoughtful eyes. "Teacher, I want to speak about becoming a teacher, like you. But I am afraid people will laugh at me." Meena knelt beside him. "Why would they laugh? Teaching is a noble dream. You have every right to share it proudly." Ravi hesitated, but then nodded slowly. "Then I will try." The day of the exhibition came. The hall was decorated with charts, models, and drawings. Parents, teachers, and even visitors from the town gathered. Each child presented their dream. Some read poems, some displayed small science projects, and some shared paintings. When Ravi's turn arrived, he walked nervously to the stage. His small hands trembled as he held a piece of paper. The audience grew quiet. Meena, sitting in the front row, gave him an encouraging smile. Ravi took a deep breath. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice soft but clear. "My name is Ravi. When I grow up, I want to become a teacher. A teacher who helps children who are poor, like I was. I want to make sure no child leaves school because of hunger or lack of money. I want to give them hope, just like my teacher gave me hope." His words touched every heart in the room. Many parents wiped their eyes quietly. Mr. Arjun leaned back in his chair, deeply moved. And Meena, she could not stop the tears that rolled down her cheeks. When Ravi finished, the hall erupted in applause. He looked up in surprise, his nervousness melting into a shy but proud smile. Later, when the event ended, parents and visitors came to Meena. "You must be proud," one mother said warmly. The boy spoke with such honesty. "It shows the kind of guidance you have given him." Meena only smiled humbly. But inside, her heart was overflowing. In the weeks that followed, Ravi's dream speech became the talk of the school. Children admired him, and teachers encouraged him. His parents, too, began to see education differently. They supported him in ways they had never done before, allowing him to spend more time studying instead of working. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Meena and Mr. Arjun walked through the quiet schoolyard. "Do you see what has happened?" Mr. Arjun asked softly. "This boy was almost lost to the streets, but now he stands tall because of you." Meena shook her head gently. "No, sir. It is because of him. He had the strength to hold on, even when life was hard." Mr. Arjun smiled. "And you gave him the reason to hold on." As time went on, Meena's own life transformed. She was no longer the teacher who was fired. She was now the teacher who fought for a child and gave him a new chance. Her story spread quietly in the town, and many parents admired her dedication. Ravi, meanwhile, continued to grow. His grades improved, his confidence shone, and his laughter filled the classroom. Often, he reminded Meena of her promise to believe in him. And each time, she reminded him to believe in himself. One day, as the final bell rang, Ravi lingered in the classroom. He walked to her desk and said, "Teacher, do you know what you gave me?" She looked at him with curiosity. "What, Ravi?" He smiled softly. "You gave me a future." Meena's eyes filled with quiet tears. She reached out and held his hands. "And you gave me strength, Ravi. You gave me back my purpose." In that moment, both teacher and student realized how much they had changed each other's lives. The journey that had started with struggle and pain had ended in hope and transformation. Meena had once been broken by injustice, but now she stood stronger than ever, surrounded by children who loved her and guided by a principal who believed in her. And Ravi, once a boy with torn clothes and empty hands, now held dreams brighter than the stars. Together, they had proven that kindness and courage could change everything.